Okay.
Hey guys, this is Dana. I don't mean to be rude. I just wanted to listen in if you don't mind. So,
Hi, Dana.
Hi, Dana.
morning.
Okay, we're live.
Okay, I'd like to call the third meeting of the Subcommittee on Economics and Infrastructure to order. And do we need a roll call, or is it, I don't know if officially it matters for the minutes that Erica and I are here.
I made note of both of you being here.
Okay. We could wait to approve the minutes for ESOU. JM, you'd probably have to remind me if I don't do it at the top of the meeting. Okay, great. So I'm pretty sure ESOU has some things to say, but we'll have to proceed. I think on agenda item 2, sharing of research or new info, I don't know, Erica, if you had anything that fit this agenda item that you wanted to share.
I don't know if this pertains to it, but I had reached out to a couple organizations that specifically focus on reentry of folks coming out of prison and wanting work. And these companies, this is what they do. They get them organized, they get them ready in terms of resume coaching, discussions around getting them linked to companies that are open to hiring them. So I've had some discussions with organizations who specifically focus on the reentry program. And they're open to, discussing with anybody who's willing to help. But other than that, that's kind of the only research that recently I have done to just gain some more momentum around that.
Okay. When we move on to development of recommendations, which is the next item, I'm thinking, I wonder if when you talk with them next or email exchange, if you can, given our task, which will be to develop sort of priority areas and aspirational priorities for the city, I wonder if they might help you form a couple recommendations that the subcommittee could consider. And ideally, we do that next time.
Okay, absolutely. I will reach out again. Lauren is her name, the director of the self-improvement reentry program. And I will discuss with her some options or recommendations that she would have for us. That's a great idea.
And I think that there's 2 levels. I don't know, this is how I'm approaching it for what it's worth. The big, probably the task force is going to be focused on these broader recommendations and priorities, which I think that she could help you maybe hone in on a couple big picture things for a community that wants to help with reentry. But then I think might as well dive a little deeper and get a few recommendations about like what they're running into when it comes to making it happen, so that even if it's not in a task force recommendation, because maybe it's too specific, you could share it with us and we'd be educated on it, but also it might fall into, future specific recommendations that we could work with the council on.
Right, absolutely. What they're challenged with, what kind of their needs are.
Yeah.
Today versus kind of historically how they have made things happen. Okay.
Like, for example, I think mobility has to be one of the big issues, right?
Oh, that's huge.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Great. That's
that was one thing.
Sorry.
Oh, no, I was saying, which I know that was one of the items we want to focus on, is the mobility transportation piece and how we can integrate that into the, big picture of how to get folks here in Dublin who otherwise don't have that, option. But yes, okay. Thank you. Sorry. I was just making that point.
Do you think a month approximately 3 weeks from now or something would work? Like for what, or 4 weeks, whenever our next meeting is?
Yes,
Okay, great.
that's
Thank you.
plenty of time.
We must say hi to Esau.
Hi, Esau. How are you?
Good morning. Here we go. I am well.
There you
Thank you.
go.
Good morning. We're glad you joined us.
Thank you. Internet keeps dropping this morning, so if I do disappear, I'll try to come back on as soon as I can yet again.
Great. Since you're here, we'll go back to agenda item approval of minutes. Before we move to approve them, do I first ask if there's any changes? Do you guys have any changes to the minutes that we need to address?
None from me.
No change.
Can I get a motion to approve them?
I move to approve the minutes as presented.
Move to approve?
All in favor? All three of us? Great.
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks. Esau, we were just on number 2 on our agenda, sharing of research and new info. And then we're going to go to number 3, talking a little bit more about developing draft recommendations for the task force. I didn't know if there was anything that you would call, research that you've been working on or new info that we should consider or no.
No, nothing that really is worth sharing, unfortunately.
Okay. So on number 3, development of draft recommendations for task force consideration. I know we talked last time about bringing recommendations, but since then, the Beaverton, Oregon plan has been shared with the task force. And I guess we can cover a lot of things here, but I definitely wanted to confirm with you guys, if you had a chance to even look at it yet, what your sense of it is as a starting document or a template by which we can work from. I'm pretty optimistic about the fact that it gives us some structure and literally a starting point that will, I think, promote us meeting the goals in a timely fashion, which is obviously what we want to do.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely. I thought
definitely.
it's totally a blueprint for which we can follow. Obviously, we tailor it to what is relevant for Dublin, but any city, the biggest items on there in terms of home ownership, employment, resources for single parent homes. Those were just little elements of, I think they had 6 main focus areas that we can really speak to and tailor towards for Dublin. I just thought it was a great representation of what cities can do, and we can follow that for sure.
Great.
Another piece on there I wanted to bring up. Oh, the diversity advisory board. That's really important because, and I know that's sort of in the future, but again, once we provide these recommendations, how do we make sure that we have some, holding the hands of the city and making sure that, we realize some of these recommendations. So I think that's what that diversity advisory board was for. Was to make sure that that ball keeps being pushed forward. And this is sort of, as we discussed before, this doesn't really end. This keeps going on and on and on. So I thought whoever found that was a great resource for us to really reference and mold our plan around.
There's a lot in there. I read that and I was very impressed. Certainly a group of people put a lot of work into it. And I think it's also an indication, as they stated, that this has been an ongoing effort for some time for them, that this is a second iteration of what they put together. And I think it's pretty evident that they have had a lot more experience. And if I have to guess, they probably have more people working on this over time than perhaps where we are as City of Dublin in our effort. I especially appreciate the fact that they have the metrics built in. So not only have they identified some of the objectives, which many of them do align with ours or what we think ours would be, they have also gone the step of how do we measure it? How do we know that we are getting better? And that is something that we have also talked about in our task force. What are the things that we are going to look at and we're going to evaluate so that we are being data driven to some extent? I think there's a lot that we can learn from and use to our advantage. Thanks to Beaverton.
Yeah. Great. I just wanted to bring that up because I think, you know, tonight's meeting for the task force, there will be a review of it, which will bring everybody up to speed. But hopefully, I suspect most, if not all, the task force concurs with us that this is a good start and we can go ahead and move from it.
Definitely.
Again, I when I'm looking away, I'm typing, so just in case it's weird that I am listening to you, I'm actually typing for my own notes because I'm having a hard time remembering all the details from various meetings I'm having in my life. Great, so we're on board with that. Do you guys, I'm interested to see, I mean, this number 3 agenda item is really the bulk of our meeting today.
Right.
I think probably all 3 of us have some general recommendations. Not sure how to proceed in this section. I don't know if we just want to share what we've been thinking about or what we're, you know, what we're close to proposing that the subcommittee would adopt. Or we could literally look at the Beaverton priority areas and explicitly just dive into sort of what their language says and as a group try to identify or what we might be likely to adopt or what we want to alter based on our experience in Dublin.
I think from our meetings combined, I feel like we had 3 main areas, and please chime in if these aren't accurate. But to start, obviously, we talked about workforce diversity, being able to bring on diverse subcontractors into the city, and also have a resource platform for our businesses here to integrate and link into diversity initiatives and help support them. And then, of course, as I keep mentioning, the reentry for folks coming home who have served time in prison, advocating for these people, especially who are going through these specific programs, to get them primed, if you will, to become productive citizens of the community. And then we also had talked about transportation, but I think we decided that might be something separate that we would focus on in addition to housing. Those were, I'm looking at my notes here, and I apologize, they're not as organized as I'd like them to be, but those were kind of the main items that we have discussed over the weeks of the focused areas we want to push forward for recommending. And I know we need to kind of dive in deeper. What does that mean? What specifically under those areas do we want to focus on and actually tie a metric to? if that makes sense.
I agree, Erica. I think we initially said of those three, we will focus our energy and attention on workforce diversity and more on the economic development side of things specifically.
Yeah, I think it's a nice
To,
summary.
set the baseline, Bridget, I would love to hear what the two of you have perhaps prepared for today, as well as share with you what I have started to put together. I imagine there will be a lot of overlaps among the three of us. And then once we at least hear what we have put together, then maybe we can take a look at the relevant points within the Beaverton document.
Yeah, so I was getting a little bit more specific, I think, earlier, and now I'm this Beaverton approach has sort of helped me recognize the long-term nature of this effort, and specifically, as Erica mentioned, the reality of if there is commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion in the city, then it hasn't even begun with our task force, because we know the city's been working on it, and it's not going to end with our task force. Hopefully it's literally the beginning of a longer term effort that's just ends up integrated into the community and what the city wants to be. So my specific recommendation was still, originally, and I guess I asked JM, it's a little unclear to me, JM, how details get fleshed out. Like for example, we're not allowed to meet, and quote, do business with each other. So in the subcommittee, is this the time where we're literally reading our recommendations and we're all talking about them and tweaking them?
Yeah, I think so. Making decisions, coming to consensus, this is where you want to do it in these meetings. If you want to share information, feel free to do that outside the meetings, just as long as you don't come to a decision.
Okay.
And I'm happy to be a middleman, so to speak, with any data gathering, information compiling that needs to be done, excuse me. So keep that in mind as well.
Okay. So I think for me, I don't have a lot of extra. Originally it was this, and I feel like this idea is, you guys are already on board, and it's sort of been enlarged, which is that I think Erica referred to it as a resource platform. Just in general, I feel like there is a role. I would recommend that the city, probably the Economic Development Commission division, takes an active role in supporting businesses in the city of Dublin that have a commitment to DEI, and the way that they would support them, without getting too specific. I mean, an example is that FitBiz program? FitBiz, I think I was calling it FitBit, but something like the FitBiz program, which I just felt like the reasons that had a lot of potential was because as an employer in Dublin, we've been contacted by them about wellness programs, and I could imagine that there's a DEI effort within the city where there is staff assigned to it, and there's outreach to the companies, and follow up with those who are interested, who are trying to do all the other things that we know are important, like increasing, the applicants from diverse backgrounds, how to increase hiring and retention of those qualified applicants. For those businesses like ours, where there is some skilled labor needs, are there programs that we could be connected to, and this DEI support could help us? I mean, it could be everything from reaching out to veterans to reaching out to reentry folks, reentering from prison. Certainly businesses can do this on their own, but I think that there's something to be said for having a resource at the city level that sort of knows all the players and can connect businesses with all the advocates that exist in the city. Or even, it doesn't even have to be the city. Some of us are, we relocate employees depending on where they live currently and the fact that they want to work for us. So, and I think, Esau, you talked, I think, correctly about when we sort of addressed this last time. I remember you saying, and you sort of alluded to it again, like related to this is the broader idea that I think we all agree that the city will have to spend resources on meeting these goals. It's not, and I don't mean to put words into your mouth. My interpretation is that just like any business, the city government obviously has limits on budget and time and employees. So there has to be a decision about priorities and where to spend those limited resources. And I think we as a subcommittee, when it comes to this particular issue, and probably the whole task force, would recognize that we would recommend the city spend some of the resources longer term on this to help make it happen. Other than that, I haven't, I've looked at the Beaverton thing, and I think there's a lot we could start with there, although they're not necessarily appropriate for Dublin, but they're really good place to like have discussions. But maybe we can do that as individuals in email exchanges or even on a quick phone call where we specifically look at the Beaverton stuff, so that I don't take up any more time and I can pass it off to Esau now, because I can hopefully you have some things to share.
Yeah, I did talk about like, the city's commitment and how visible it is, because one of the things that I think I realized last time was that there was a lot that has been done already, but perhaps not too visibly. And whether it is just something related to the economic development or something just for the whole city to say, this is our stance. Whatever we or City of Dublin is doing, I think it just needs to be more public. So to some extent, perhaps to a large extent, my recommendations that I put together, some bullet points which I can beat off, pertains to that. Not in particular order. I think what I can do is maybe just read it. They're not really any difficult English by any means. So I would just read it, and JM or Bridget, I'll just send them to you so that one way or another it can just be incorporated into the minutes or whatever the recommendations that we may make. So total of 6 points. Starting off, boldly communicate that DEI matters in Dublin, including prominent display of the city's commitment on its website. So that's not necessarily our subcommittee per se, but just the overall messaging. And then identify DEI-related metrics for economic development to guide future recruitment and expansion efforts. Prominently feature all DEI-related resources economic development already has, and include them as a regular part of any presentations to potential business partners.
Can you repeat that one, Esau? When you're turning, it's a little harder for us to hear. I know you're reading it. Maybe just
let me see if I can move this. All right. So that last one that I just read, prominently feature all DEI-related resources economic development already has, and include them as a regular part of any presentations to potential business partners. Number 4, recognize DEI initiatives and efforts among Dublin businesses and feature them in city communications. Reward their successes with incentives tied to DEI metrics. Number 5, ensure that city procurement reflects the diversity of the business community in Dublin and beyond. And then number 6, this all of a sudden gets very specific, I realize, but it's the last one is expand the visibility and usability of existing last mile shuttle service. And by that, I mean the share ride or the share shuttle service. I did see it on the website, and I'm impressed that number 1, we have it. And number 2, it's free to everybody that uses it. I think it's a shame that not enough people know about it. And that, if you didn't see it on the economic development website, and if it were some kind of a YouTube video on Dublin City's channel, it'll almost look like it's specific to senior citizens. And I think it just needs to be presented in a way that makes it more mainstream, that it's open to everybody. Those are what I put together. And like I said, I would imagine some of them, if not all of them, can be combined into more of a major talking points that we may ultimately put forth.
Great. Erica, did you have anything that you wanted to add besides what you had shared earlier? We can't hear you.
Sorry about that. No, that was the main thing. I just wanted to make sure that from a high level standpoint that we had our areas of focus agreed upon, which we do. So
actually, along that line, can we have because I think it's interesting because part of what Esau just said, it definitely, when I think back to the Beaverton plan, I'm wondering if our subcommittee needs to be adjusted at all. For example, our subcommittee covers the Beaverton. The Beaverton approach has that city workforce approach, like procurement and hiring among the city, which I know there are already things in place that the city's working on. So we do want the city government to have obviously their own internal commitment to DEI and some metrics about that. So I think we'll have to get a little bit more specific about it. Then we have the external, just general businesses and workforce and hiring among corporations and companies in Dublin. And that's sort of this other category that I think our subcommittee's working on.
Right.
And then the third thing, mobility doesn't show up explicitly, at least with my perusing of the Beaverton thing. So we know that that's an issue, and I think we all three care about that, and we love hearing what the city's already doing. We want to support that and maybe add on, especially Erica, after you hear from the folks you're talking to about getting formerly incarcerated qualified applicants actually to their job every day out in the suburbs.
Right.
And then the fourth thing was, I think Beaverton called it housing and livability.
Right.
And the three, so I guess it would help me if we could confirm that we want to do all those things stay in this subcommittee, or should we, to me, the obvious break is to consider, should there be a housing subcommittee? I'm not interested in extra subcommittees. I'm just interested in what you guys think. And also if you were planning to work on housing issues within this subcommittee, or is that the time where you might peel off because you don't have the time or as great an interest in it?
I would love to incorporate that. Obviously, I know we're all strapped with time with our other responsibilities, and that's half my issue. But I think that it's a relevant focus when we talk about economics and infrastructure within a city. But I understand if it makes sense to devote the amount of time needed, if it makes sense to separate it for it to be more effective. I understand that. So I'm open to both, but as I'm looking at, going back to your point, Bridget, about the specific areas that Beaverton is focused on, the three that pop out to me that pertains to what our subcommittee is doing is the economic empowerment, the housing and livability, city practice. Those three, which seem to be a lot, I know, but I was just trying to narrow down these areas they're sharing and how that relates to our subcommittee and what we want to, if we want to tailor it to that or not.
I think a lot may depend on, number one, how much time we have to work on these things, and how many people are actually working on it. And that I look back to how we divided up into the three subcommittees as we currently stand. And my recollection is that most people give it up on the education or youth engagement subcommittee. And I don't even know if there was anybody on the third one. I hope there were. I just feel like, Bridget, even if we were to peel off the housing as a separate subcommittee, we may not have any more people that would be interested in being on it. And if anybody, it would likely be the three of us anyway, based on how we divided up in the first place. So, I think if we can be prudent with our time use, and if we can make sure that we have enough time for discussion on different topics, my opinion is that this is probably still the most efficient way or efficient place to discuss those topics.
I appreciate that, you guys. So I can stop wondering, like, from my perspective, I don't want housing and livability or just housing in general to take a back seat. So in a way I thought, well, maybe there should be a separate subcommittee, but it sounds like the three of us are agreed that it does make sense just to be moving forward. And we are in fact closer, I think, than we think to finalizing the economic part of stuff which allows us to move towards housing. And if it's okay with you guys, I do think we want to finish sort of our current focus, maybe add a little bit more regarding mobility to it, and then move on to housing. Does that sound right to you guys? And I do think the one person that stood out to me in the task force the last meeting, I don't know if Stephen White, he seemed to really care about housing. So I was going to give him a call or at least try to email him. Of course, that was a month ago when I thought that's what I should do. And now the task force meeting is tonight. But I feel like we might have one or two other people join us when we're dealing with housing. So we can keep our ears open to who we might recruit.
And I have a recommendation just to jump in here. If you would like to wrap up the economic part of it, may I suggest that we invite Colleen is it Gilger?
Gilger.
I've actually never said her last name before. She's the director of economic development, and I can always invite her to the next meeting. And as well as, I don't know if there'll be time, but I'm happy to do a mobility overview with you all with our operators share. I can invite them and they can talk about some of the challenges and opportunities they see with the service. So I just want to propose those two items and see what your reactions are.
And if I can add about housing, I know, I'm not sure if you had a chance to look at council recommendation when Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission presented their housing strategy to council, council has given us a green light to look at housing specific for Dublin. So we will be beginning housing study soon, and that's under planning. So it's higher on our priority list. So that would be another opportunity to really participate because the focus of that study is housing for Dublin. Erica, you're
Sorry, I keep doing that. Who is that with again, Deviani?
So Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission is a regional MPO. They did regional housing study recently and presented their recommendation to Dublin City Council. And Dublin Council guided us to build on what they have already presented and come up with more Dublin-specific recommendations when it comes to housing.
So they work with multiple cities in
Correct,
the
yes.
Ohio.
Yeah, it's 7-county region, Central Ohio, yes.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
have, sorry.
No, go ahead, Bridget.
I did review, and I can send it to you guys, or maybe, I don't know, Deviani, if you have that 6-page MORPC review. It's really, it's only 6 pages. I was like so excited to see a regional housing strategy, and it's literally just a summary, so it is something you can read. And it is, it's pretty helpful, and I know the city was very involved with that. And it really does, again, sort of like Beaverton. I mean, it's a little bit more specific, but it will help us develop some housing recommendations. So if you can maybe put it in MS Teams if it's not already there. Is it, by the way, Erica and Esau, do you guys have access to MS Teams, the Dublin site?
I need to figure that out on my end still.
I did have access, I don't anymore, so we're working on that.
I've been trying to get back into it for the last week or so, and it keeps giving me problems. I was able to get back in for a while, or get in for a while. For some reason, I can't anymore.
That's interesting. So it's not just me.
No, I think it's all of us. Is who set it up? It was that somebody set it up on.
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
However, everyone is having issues with it, so I'm blaming Microsoft for it. I will figure out. I can work with our IT staff to figure out what's going on.
Okay, but it would be the email that, like my email, the invitation was sent to today, that would be the email you're utilizing. I just want to make sure I didn't
Yes.
the wrong email or something. Okay.
Okay, so back to what JM was recommending, it reminded me that this sort of number 5 on our agenda, like likely agenda items for the next meeting.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking that on my end, I was hoping to hear more about the mobility. Is it the Dublin Connector? Is that what you call it? Yeah.
That is 1/5 of it.
Okay.
There's 5 areas we're looking at. In the Dublin Connector is the microtransit shuttle that we operate. We oversee the operation of. There are 4 other areas I'm dive into. I also posted links to the regional housing study by MORPC in the chat box, as well as a newly created regional mobility plan. So these are very timely for our conversation. It may be worth looking at what they have for the scope of the region and see how it can impact or relate to Dublin.
So I'm having a hard time hearing folks. I don't know if we all need to be on mute unless we're talking. Maybe that will help. I think it is helping. Thank you. JM, what you just said then, so you're saying there's more info. It is definitely timely. So I don't know how the other folks feel, but I feel like hearing more about the broad mobility program next month really will be timely for what we're trying to do. Do you guys agree? Yeah.
Absolutely, yes.
Great. And then, I mean, we can't have too many speakers. The other thing I wondered what you guys thought, besides, I appreciate if Colleen Gilger can come. I was sort of interested in hearing more about DEC. I was going to call it the wrong DEC. What a Dublin Enterprise or Entrepreneurial Council or Center. Thank you. and I went on their website. I've done some research, and I'm trying to be sensitive to this idea. I don't know where I got the sense that they had a DEI commitment. I don't know if I made that up. It's not clear on their website. And I don't know that, I don't want them to freak out that the task force thinks they ought to like do this, this, and this. Not that that is, meaningful, but I felt like maybe there's room for DEC to do stuff, or for that to be, again, a model that is considered when it comes to entrepreneurial diversity. And Isao, you seem to know more about it. I don't know. Do you think we should talk to DEC next month?
I think it's worth inquiring first if they feel like they have some things that they would like to share with us. If they don't feel like it, then there's certainly no reason for us to push the issue. Although I think a focus on entrepreneurship or developing entrepreneurial businesses is a critical piece if we're talking about economic development. And I did notice that was something Beaverton had mentioned on their study as well. So if they don't have anything that they feel comfortable sharing, I think that can certainly be a part of our conversation or recommendation.
So I guess that means, JM, maybe is it appropriate to ask you to find out if DEC has a summary of themselves or something that they want to share? Again, they don't have to come and talk because we only have so much time, but maybe at least initially we can get a sense of whether we need to talk to them, or if we just know that we'll have a better sense of what they're doing, and we'll know when we're promoting entrepreneurial diversity, et cetera, that, we might see that as a model.
Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion. Emily mentioned that she was taking the lead on setting up availability for Chaz to speak with us. So I'll work with her on that. And I think we should shoot for next meeting to at least have a little bit of time for him to talk about what they're doing at the DEC and if it can be translatable to what we're doing here.
So that means for likely agenda for next next month, it sounds like maybe a visit from the DEC person with a summary, and we can ask them some questions, and then a summary from you or somebody else about the broader mobility efforts in Dublin. I do think that especially if MS Teams is up and available, we should all try to read up on this stuff and maybe visit DEC's website, but also read up on whatever you guys are posting so that we're better prepared to use our time. I know I'm not up to date on the mobility stuff, so I really want to get access to that before the next meeting. And then is Colleen, do we need her? Do we want to invite Colleen Gilger, Economic Development Division Head, here next month, or is that already pretty full?
I'd like to have her with us, if anything, for her to hear some of the discussion points or why we got to where we got to, and for her to understand, not that she doesn't already, but really to hear from us and for us to know perhaps what's been going on from her point of view, efforts related to DEI.
Were you thinking about maybe doing 15-minute blocks for each of the speakers, and that would leave maybe 15 minutes for any housekeeping that needs to be done or what have you?
I think that can work. In the big picture, you guys, I think if the next meeting is a lot of speakers, then what we'll really want to do is try to plan to really flesh out the overall aspirational recommendations, so that we stay on track with the proposed timeline that I think Dana is gonna share tonight. I'm comfortable with that. Are you guys?
I think we need to be a little bit better at communicating outside of these meetings. I think we're all a little gun shy about what we are and what we're not allowed to do. But
Totally.
yeah, I think it's time for us to push the envelope a little bit.
Agreed.
If it makes you feel better, I'll be the guardrails for the subcommittee. I'll try and give you as much free rein as possible.
Well, and you really, what you said today was I don't know, I guess it's been said before, but I really appreciated it. It was like, it sounds like we can meet and talk as long as we're not making decisions.
Right. All decisions are public in government, so that has to be part of the public record and the public eye. But I think exchanging information is okay, just as long as you don't come to consensus or decision on topics of the day. And what I can do also is I can put together a PowerPoint. It's very high level, and I can share that with you prior to our meeting if you want to go through it and then follow along, present.
And that would be, you're saying a PowerPoint on what topic?
On mobility. I'll cover mobility.
Oh, okay.
Great.
Yes. I only take responsibility for mobility. Yes.
I do
No, I
have
think you have responsibility for other things.
Yes. Generally speaking, for the topics we're talking about, Viviani and I have been working on mobility for well over, I think, a year and a half now. So I'm excited to talk about it and get the momentum going.
I do have a question on that word mobility. Obviously, depending on what word comes before that, it can encompass many different types of mobility. Here in our context, we're talking about transportation, correct?
Correct. Expanding mobility options and thinking about destinations and what the best mobility option is for each destination. So perhaps going to school versus going to the library versus going grocery shopping could have different ways to get there, but we want to make sure you get there safely and timely, and those things considered. Just to give you a preview, I mean, we focus on workforce support, but we also support on aging in place and quality of life and people with disabilities. And that's more to the funding that's available at the federal and state levels, and what we have to follow those grants are focused on these communities.
That makes sense. Where the funding is available, you got to be able to take advantage of that, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But thankfully, City Council also has money that they're putting towards mobility programs that can be expanded to serve the community's needs as they arise.
And I
Very good.
wonder if, sorry, our subcommittee might need to address transportation and mobility for seniors. We don't want that lost, and obviously age diversity is part of the community effort. So really being in line, being sensitive to what their needs might be. We should try not to forget that opportunity here.
That's a great point, Bridget. And Esau, I think you were alluding to that with regards to share ride, because that I thought that was for seniors only, but that is, you're saying, can be used for anybody who needs services. I don't know. I need to get refreshed up on it, but to your point, Bridget, yes, that share ride is for, I thought that was initially created for seniors.
That's now my impression, that it is available to non-seniors, because I did get to that link from the economic development webpage. So again, it may be a matter of how effectively are we anticipating what we've already got before we even think about expanding it.
The only thing I ask is that you become advocates and champions of mobility after that meeting and share it with the community.
I grew up in Japan. That's not a problem. Public transportation is the king.
That's me selfishly asking for your end of the deal.
I think you can be assured you have friends here, JM.
Okay, good. Well, I'd be happy to talk more about mobility next meeting.
So we should wrap up soon. Assignment of tasks, I think, back to it sounds like the three of us are going to try to connect and really flesh out some language, I think is where we're at, really, is fleshing out some language, even though we won't have the benefit of the next meeting yet. We certainly have enough to get started on, 10, maybe even more items. And then based on the next meeting, and all the input we get, maybe we could then flesh out some more and then make decisions on the following meeting. Does that sound reasonable?
Absolutely. And can I share, and maybe I can just share this with you guys offline, but the document, I'm just writing notes this whole meeting of, here are our focused areas. And that way we can, let me just share it because I think it's better doing that than trying to explain it. Can you see my screen?
Yeah. Yes.
So this is me just taking a rough shot. This needs to be changed. We can change it, obviously, and I was kind of mimicking the Beaverton areas, but these we can get more detailed in our recommendations. But economic empowerment, we have workplace diversity, resource platform for businesses, metrics, city practices in terms of hiring diversity within the council members. And to your point, Esau, about the city needs to boldly push this communication to everyone to show what we're doing. And then housing and livability, mobility, transportation. Does this sum up how we want to present the recommendations, or we really need to kind of shuffle this around a bit more and I can send this out, or if you guys have something you'd rather use, but just to put it down on paper, I think would be helpful for us to make the final decision around these items.
This is awesome. I think, Esau, if you'd agree, I mean, we could start with this, and that maybe this just forms our conversation that the three of us will have in the next couple weeks, trying to flesh out more ideas here. And then when we come together after the input we get at the next meeting, we can make decisions about, this will get longer and we can make decisions about what we want to bring to the task force. Thank you, Erica. That's awesome. Will you email this to us?
Yes.
Great.
Do I then need to email this as well, JM, to copy you and Deviani on this?
Yes, please, just to make sure
Okay.
I include anything in the minutes that I missed.
Yes.
Bridget, you're muted. Hey, Bridget, you're on mute.
Sorry. I was asking if we can confirm that our next agenda, that we're all set for the next meetings. We have a lot we're trying to get done, and I just want to make sure at least now we think we'll all be able to make these meetings and hopefully have internet, etc. Is it the third Tuesday of the month at 8:30? Is that that's the general gist, right?
I know the next meeting's March 16th.
March 16th at 8:30. Does that work for you guys? It does for me too. Great.
And I'll reach out to everybody to see if they're available for our guest speakers on that date.
Okay.
So what I can do is, once I get confirmation, I can give you a draft agenda, so to speak. And then if you all just want to give your reactions or any changes, and we can, that seemed to go the quickest and most efficient last time. So let's do that.
Okay. And was there new business that we haven't already addressed that anybody would like to bring up? No. Okay. Then I think that I would move to adjourn the meeting today. Can I have a second? And we're all in favor, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks, JM and Deviani.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon, Erica and Isabel.
Okay,
Bye,
thanks
everyone.
again, Bridget. Isao, everybody.
Have a good day.
Bye.
You too.
I'll send that out now. Bye-bye.
Thank you.